And welcome back to Open Your Eyes, and we're moving into our second topic for discussion for the morning. It's actually a book review, a narrative of political parties. Now we've got in with us the author, none other than Lawrence Vernon. He's in with us, and Rolando Cocum, who is the Senior Research and Education Officer at the Institute of Social and Cultural Research, NICH. We want to wish you guys a very pleasant morning. Happy New Year, by the way, and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning to you, and Happy New Year's, and to all the staff here and staff at the National Institute of Culture and History, staff at the Belize National Library Service.
Yeah.
Pleasant good morning. Happy New Year's to all our friends, colleagues, followers.
You practiced that last night.
Yeah.
And so, you know, reading over it last night as to the topic for this morning, you know, it strikes me as, wow, something that we need to look upon. And one of the things that stand out to me is the fact that when it comes to our secondary schools, actually our primary, we should be cognizant of politics in our country, those who led before us, those who are leading now, and prepare young people to lead for the future. Let's get to a background from you, Mr. Lawrence. You have a background. Where you from? What's up with you? Tell us.
Well, I'm a career librarian.
Okay.
I've been a librarian since 1956, working with the National Library Service. And I rose up through the ranks and eventually became chief librarian in 1978 until I retired officially in 1992. But I'm still engaged with the National Library Service on a contract basis. I must say that from 1992, I was engaged to work at the University of Belize Library, and I spent 11 years there, and then I came back to the National Library Service. During my period with the Library Service, I found that a librarian's job is to collect information, arrange it and disseminate it to the public. And this I found to be my liking and very rewarding, because you know that people come into the library and they do not really know where to find information, and this is what a librarian does, find information for them.
Yeah.
And this actually, John, is what prompted me to do research, because the students kept coming in and asking for the cultural groups, the Creole, Mestizo, and that was my sort of first publication that I compiled, and that was published. And then the same thing happened with this political parties narrative. People came asking for the political parties, information on them, and so I did my research from the local newspapers that were available, and I compiled it into the present book that you see. Actually, this book has been in the making for from 1987.
Wow.
It was first published in a publication called Readings in Belizean History, which was put out by St. John's College. A condensed version was published there. And so this, after that, I decided to increase the information in the book, because at that time, more parties were coming on stream apart from the PUP and the UDP and the NIP. And most of these were parties in opposition to the two mass parties. So I thought that it would be useful to have, as you say, let the schools students know that the students have this information available to them, because many people didn't know that there were 26 political parties that arose from throughout the history of politics in Belize.
That's one of the shocking facts that I heard from your launch, and you know, we should challenge people to try to see how much they can name. Are you aware of the 26?
No.
How many can you tell me of now? There are 2 we can mark off the list, right?
Yeah, aside
Let's
from
see,
those
who
two.
else? We'll put
I
you.
wrote those on my hand last night.
I did our
Who
homework.
do you remember other than the two main parties?
There's the Toledo Progressive Party, well, the recent one, Belize Progressive Party, the National Reform Party. Let me see. Mr. Vernon, help me out.
John, what do you remember?
I remember the NIP, the NABR. Those two I remember off the hook.
Yeah.
I don't remember the rest.
There was UBAD too.
Oh,
There was
UBAD,
UBAD, yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
And there was the evolution of what have become the main parties as well, because they started as something separate.
Progressive Independence Party.
Yeah.
Yes.
National-
Well, they did.
Since I asked the question, I don't have to answer it. I just wanted people to realize that, you know, there's far more history to the political parties in our country, where we have kind of subscribed to the fact that they're just two main political parties. But I wanna go deeper than that. Politics in this country has become almost a bad word. It's so divisive, you know, and I think that when you talk to young people especially, and I remember before a previous election, there was a very clear misconception that politics was the type of partisan politics that we're seeing today. And you really, I mean, from the back of the book, and I'm sure in the book itself, you make the distinction as to why it's important and what it really is. Can we start there?
Yes. Well, to preface that, Marlene, in Dr. Bird's foreword in the book, he actually described me as a political historian. And I am not really that. I am a librarian who dabbles in politics, really. And, from way back when the People's United Party came out of the People's Committee, the trust was always to get out of the nationalistic movement, to get out of the British movement that was stifling Belize, so to speak. And this party was always looking at self-government and independence. And I must say too that many of the other parties that came up were looking at the same thing. But the agitation at that time was very intense, and I lived some of it. I lived through some of it, having born in 1937 and attending mass meetings along with my mother. And I saw then that the trust that the leaders at that time, who included John Smith, many people didn't hear about John Smith. He only served as party leader of the PUP for about a year, and then he resigned. And then there was Lee Richardson, and then George Price became party leader in 1956. And he, of course, historically served as first minister, then eventually became prime minister for so many years. But the main thrust of politics in those days, as I said, was mainly to have the people become aware of what was going on. Many of them didn't really appreciate the fact that the party leaders were trying to get Belize out of the doldrums of colonialism. And so therefore there was a sort of big fight between the PUP at that time and the British colonial masters, the governors in Belize and whatnot. And this even prompted them, for the first time, people went to prison for their beliefs and for what they were writing at the time in the Belize Billboard. It was the first time that anybody, first and only time that any politician was jailed for his beliefs. This was Lee Richardson and Philip Golson in 1951. And they were sentenced to 1 year imprisonment and came out in 1952.
There's so much history, I think, just in the formation of our nation. What made you choose to document the political parties?
As I mentioned, it was at the request of students who came in and also my interests as a research. I must mention that I started out writing as creative writing, doing short stories.
Okay.
And I eventually moved away from that, and because the need for research was so intense, I decided to go into research writing. And this book in itself has information that really no one really had access to, except they went to go to the library and wade through the Billboard or the Clarion and whatever other, the Belize Times, because those are the newspapers I got most of my information from. Belize Billboard, the Daily Clarion, the Belize Times, the Mandala, and the Beacon, and of course the Reporter, which came up afterwards. But there is, I must mention that the Billboard and the Clarion are such enormous and important sources of information, because in those days they used to be daily newspapers, and they were very specific in what they reported on, and very precise. So the information there was very important.
Let's talk about this from the ISCR perspective and the support that you offer there.
Right. So Mr. Vernon has been a long-time collaborator with the Institute for Social and Cultural Research, and he has also worked on one of our other publications, Walk Through Old Belize, published in 2013. And so this proposal of his, when he talked to us about his latest work, the manuscript then that he had revised over the years, and he felt the need to publish and to see how students and teachers could utilize this material, was something that we warmly welcome. It's a support that we have been, it's a mechanism that we've begun using over the past few years to see how authors can do most of their work in terms of preparing the manuscript, and then we as ISCR NICH can provide the financial support, and then also assist with the book launches that have happened. We did several of them throughout the country, and we really appreciate all those persons too who attended those sessions with us. So really and truly, there's a need to contribute and build the book industry in Belize. It creates a lot of employment, and more importantly, perhaps it safeguards our national heritage and history from our viewpoint. So we're certainly looking forward to seeing how other students and teachers can utilize this book, particularly since last year they unveiled the Belizean Studies program for the high school level. And so there will be an increased demand for local research and national books and texts that could possibly be used in such curriculums.
Now, what methodology did you choose to put it all together? Because one of the concerns, I'm sure, is trying to have the book be as balanced as possible, especially when it looks at contributions by different political parties.
Yes, I tried as much as possible not to be, not to compare any political party with another. That was the first thing. It was a sort of, should I say, didactic, because the first title of the book was A History of Political Parties, and then I changed it to A Narrative of Political Parties.
Because?
Well, because when I revised it, I found that it was not as much history as that's something that can be sort of appreciated and narrated to the because I wrote it in a sort of not scholarly way, but a more reader-friendly way. And it's the first version of the book was I did it, and it was I did copies to the library branches and the archives, and shared it with some other people. It was not until, as Rolando mentioned, that I approached NICH and ISCR to finance the publication of the book. And they willingly did that. And it was done mostly through desktop publisher, Reynolds Desktop Publishing,
Yeah.
who did the formatting of the book. And then it was printed by Amazon. And we subsequently bought copies from Amazon to distribute in Belize. But
Okay.
the format of the book itself was, I must give praise to Dr. Herman Bird, who read the manuscript and suggested the reformatting of the book.
Okay.
And it's in about 6 sections. Of course, the first section deals with the first political party, the People's United Party. And then the second section deals with about 5 or 6 parties that came up in opposition to the PUP, including the National Party and some other parties. And then the third section deals with the rise of the United Democratic Party, which was an amalgamation of the National Independence Party, the People's Development Movement, and the Liberal Party, which was a party formed briefly by Manuel Esquivel.
So, what has been your most surprising revelation in putting this book together? The updated version, of course, because there's a lot that's happened.
Yeah. Well, what I tend to pinpoint in the book, my 3 favorite sections is that what I mentioned just now, only 2 people went to jail for their political writings and beliefs. And the second one was 1956, when Judge Price came to power. He was always the secretary of the party, and then 1956 there was a rift in the PUP when Philip Golson and others broke away, and Judge Price then was elected party leader and went on. And then the third one was, although several parties came up in opposition, actually one section of the book deals with what I call third party hopefuls. And these were 11 parties that were formed between 1981 and 2015. And these parties, actually, they were not successful. They just came up to oppose, and although they contested elections, they were not successful. And this is something that I think cries out for some analysis, because why is it that a third party, I must mention that there was one, but before I get to that, why third parties
Are so
can't
unsuccessful?
really be successful?
Except for the VIP in Belmopan, when they had successfully had the second highest number of votes, rather than the main major parties. How much have you found the evolution of our political parties to be cyclical? How much is still the same, and how much has changed?
Well, the 2 mass parties, to my mind, and as somebody earlier had mentioned, that the philosophies are the same. It's only the sort of the leaders and the party members who have changed, but the basic philosophy seems to have been the same. Going to self-government and independence, and doing what is necessary to win elections and things like that. The platforms that they campaigned on. But Marlene, I must mention too that the one successful third party was the neighbor, National Alliance for Belizean Rights, which
It's NABR.
NABR, which was formed by Philip Golson when he broke away from the United Democratic Party because of the Maritime Areas Act, right? Disagreement with that. And that was a very
successful third party.
Yes, and it was recognized by the National Assembly as an official third party. So much so that Golson and his colleagues were able to attend any talks in Guatemala that went abroad, and he was able to address the people at the September celebrations along with the other party leaders.
Wow.
So that's official. That's one official third party.
So do we find that information in the book?
Yes, that's in the book. Yes.
And what about from your end? Was there anything that stood out to you?
I think one of the strengths, the uniqueness of his work is that it brings in, as he suggests, a lot of the narrative. So that means that you get to hear the people speak.
Yeah.
It includes extensive quotations from the different leaders, and it's something that you rarely get to hear. You hear a lot from George Price, but you don't get to hear what John Smith may have said or what Richardson and the others have been saying during the different periods. So I think that is something very uplifting. I like the selections that were made. One of the main thing as well during the introductory parts has been understanding how the British viewed the independence movement and the movement by the People's Committee and the People's United Party. The first thing that they did was brand this party as a communist party and as a threat to the society. And I found it very surprising in some ways, because I felt that I always thought that did not occur until maybe the 70s, when they began to call the party as a communist party. Then the entire episode where you document the rift within the party, the rift was really whether on the accusation that the People's United Party was allegedly receiving funds from Guatemala. And those are some very interesting things that I think students would come to appreciate, and to see how people mobilize and network with each other within the country.
This, and it's obvious just looking at it, and like you rightly mentioned, Mr. Vernon, reader friendly, because what it does, just by looking at just this one particular point, it actually have you build conversations in your mind, so it makes you use your imagination. And it says here, he was followed by George Price, who called attention to the flag by saying, "Behold the ancient flag of this country, blue as the skies above, high ideals of democracy, the coat of arms, the symbol of our country. Take it, protect it, and love it." So you have these conversations there that you could actually read. So this is definitely.
I love the quotes.
Yes,
I think that's the best
and that's
part.
the thing. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where can we find the book? Because very interesting. Where can these books be found?
So we at NICH have it available at our offices. If you walk into the Houses of Culture, we could arrange for the books to be delivered to you. Within the next few weeks, we hope to have it at much more bookstores and outlets throughout the country. So it's something that we are working on, and we should see very promptly, making it available at the usual stops that people know where to find books.
What's been the reaction so far since the launch?
The launch was held in November 14th.
Yeah.
And I was just mentioning to Rolando that, the agreement was that with the publication of the book, NICH should donate 150 copies to me. And we only printed 500 copies at the beginning, and they would distribute the rest from NICH. And I just mentioning to Rolando, I just have about maybe half a dozen books left.
Wow.
So I think it was, the reaction was very good.
Yeah.
The
And
response.
any feedback? Because, sometimes I think some of this history people would prefer to be forgotten.
The only feedback I got, Marlene, was sort of adverse with the cover of the book. So somebody said that I should have, the idea of putting the cover, the headshots.
Yeah, chronology.
It was just those are party leaders, not prime ministers, right?
Yeah.
Party leaders.
Party leaders. And somebody said that I should not have put Philip Golson in the background. I should have put him prominently, but it was just a representative headshot, right?
Yeah.
If you go into the book, you will see pictures of Philip Golson, of course, and the others, right? But he thought that I should have put Philip Golson. Probably he mentioned he was a hero.
Yeah.
Philip Golson was his hero, so
Yeah.
you have to expect that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So definitely something. And as you said, it really is geared towards the students and the teachers.
Yes.
But everyone can benefit from being able to read and learn more about the history of the political parties.
Definitely, and maybe Rolando, you can agitate to maybe with the Ministry of Education to purchase most of them.
Sounds like a good plan to me.
All right.
All right. And what's the cost of the book?
So it retailed.
It's $30.
$30.
$30. Wow.
And it's available on Amazon too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's an easier way to get it, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming in and telling us a bit of the behind-the-scenes story of putting it together. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me.
We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, it'll be for some new recipes to try for 2019, so stay tuned.